I'm Olivia Clarke, and I'm editor of Chicago Lawyer Magazine and the Chicago Daily Law Bulletin, and I'm here with the Inside Out columnists Tina Martini and David Susler. And today we're going to be talking about taking initiative in your career. How you guys doing today?
Good.
How are you? Good, good. So I guess I'll start with how can someone be proactive in their profession without being aggressive? You know, if they're, whether it's pitching ideas or just volunteering for things, how do you have that balance?
Do you want to kick it off?
It's someone has to be genuine, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
You have to work within your personality. And it's a fine line, and it's a different point with different people. Some people can go a lot farther than others can. I think that's where you start.
I agree with David. I think it's all about context. And it also depends on what you're trying to pitch. Are you trying to pitch an idea at work with your colleagues? Are you pitching an idea with a client? You have to try to gauge the receptivity and where people are at if you're trying to convince them, with respect to a particular idea. If you're pitching yourself, it's a little bit different. If you're at a networking reception versus in an interview, and even in the interviewing context, depending on who you're interviewing with in terms of one company to the next, or even within the context of one particular company, the different people that you meet, you're going to have a different approach. So I agree with David. It's a very delicate balance. A lot of it is about, I guess, keeping in this vein of emotional intelligence, which seems to be pervading a lot of what we talk about. A lot of it is picking up on the cues, picking up on the cues that you get from your environment, from the people around you, and just good common sense about how best to frame issues, how best to try to persuade folks about a particular idea or a particular thought you might have.
To kind of flash back in my head to my first law firm, and we'd have these law firm meetings, and the two named partners would talk about how do you get business. They have very different styles. One was very upfront and was very comfortable saying, "So when are you going to give me business?" The other would never utter those words to save his life. He was much more subtle approach. So that's what I thought of. And then when you mentioned interviewing, and you have to sell yourself, it can be very unnatural for people to brag about themselves, so to speak, or really trumpet themselves in an interview, though you have to in that context. But again, you have to be honest, you have to be genuine about the way you approach it, and that will be very different than how you talk about yourself at a cocktail party, for example.
So this could be kind of a worst case scenario, but say
Thanks, Olivia.
It could happen. So say you have some good ideas and you're sharing them with your colleagues or your boss, but you're finding that those great ideas are being pitched and others are taking the credit for it, or how do you right that ship in a positive way?
Well, it's in the in-house context. The advice I often give, especially to new to in-house, is lawyers have to check their ego at the door. So I feel my position more often than not is to give the credit to the business people. They're the ones who have to take that credit. I may on the slide let my boss know, hey, this is my idea. But in the in-house context, I think it doesn't serve the in-house lawyer well to trumpet themselves over their business colleagues. Now, if you're in the in-house department and you want to advance your own career within the department, again, it's going to be very different than in a law firm because it's still a business mentality.
Well, in private practice, there's different dynamics going on. You've got the client service aspect to it, and I actually take it as the greatest form of flattery when I come up with an idea for a client and then the client in turn turns around and makes their colleagues feel like they came up with the idea. I actually see that as a sign of success, that the client thinks that what I came up with is a good idea. When you're talking about your work colleagues, it's obviously trickier, as you alluded to, and what you have to do is you've got to do a cost-benefit analysis, because it really depends on how important being proprietary and being the person who takes the credit really is, because a lot of times in the context of a law firm, the collaboration and the teamwork is more important than who came up with the idea. Now, so, you know, obviously it's all about a moderation too. If you notice that a particular person is consistently not just taking your ideas, but is somehow misappropriating things that you come up with, that's a whole other side of the coin that I think does need to be rectified, and you have to start wondering how are they getting access to things that you're writing and things like that. But I think when it comes up in a sort of collaborative and brainstorming context, more often than not in my experience, it's better to not try to go too far out on a limb to take credit for the idea, because then you may be seen as somebody who isn't collaborative, and that's really what I think the main thing is that keeps law firms going and what keeps them profitable and moving in the right direction, particularly when they're larger firms. You need to have that collaboration, particularly across practice areas.
And I would agree with that too, and it also relates back to what we talked about in the first question. It's a matter of context. When, again, we're lawyers, whether in-house or private practice, we're in the service industry. It is a collaborative team effort. We want the best result for our clients, both in-house and private practice. So Tina may be in the scenario where she's collaborating with her partners and associates. I may be collaborating with my business folks, but we want the best result for the client. So credit is not relevant there. And you know, and again, going back to, well, how do you take credit? I may let my boss know. Well, you know, the individuals want their bosses or the powers that be that determine their own personal career path and compensation. There's another time and place to do that.
Maybe during like a review or something like that.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Usually my experience is that it is in a review context or in some other context where it isn't the big group, because
Yes.
there are too many dynamics going on in that type of a situation that you have to be concerned about.
Okay. Well, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So stay tuned for our next video, which will be talking about the best of videos and some questions and some topics that we have covered throughout the last few years. Thank you.